4 or 5 years. Been super excited when Gina reached out inviting me. So today I was hoping to talk not only about my journey, but hopefully frame it for some of you guys studying advertising just like I studied advertising. Has anybody here heard of Ira Glass from This American Life? Nobody? Maybe? 2 people? Okay, so let's watch a two-minute video real quick, which will help frame the conversation. Does that should work okay?
It should. Yes.
Yeah, turn it.
Really tells people who are beginners. I agree with something that folks can say, is that all of us who do creative work, like, we get into it, and we get into it because we have good days. But it's like there's an app that for the first couple of years that you're making stuff, what you're making isn't so good, okay? It's not that great. It's trying to be good, it has sufficient good, it's not quite that good. But your taste, the thing that got me into the game, your taste is still killer. And your taste is good enough that you can tell that what you're making is kind of a disappointment to you, you know what I mean? A lot of people never get past that phase. A lot of people at that point, they quit. And the thing I would just like say to you with all my heart is that most everybody I know who does interesting creative work, they went through a phase of years where they had really good taste, they could tell what they were making wasn't as good as they wanted it to be. They knew it fell short. It didn't have this special thing that we wanted to have. And the thing I would say to you is everybody goes through that. And for you to go through it, if you're running through right now, if you're just getting out of that phase, you gotta know it's totally normal. And the most important possible thing you can do is do a lot of work. Do a huge volume of work. Put yourself on a deadline so that every week or every month you know you're gonna finish one story. Because it's only by actually going through a volume of work that you're actually going to catch up and close that gap. And the work you're making will be as good as your visions. It takes a while. It's going to take you a while. It's normal to take a while. And you just have to fight your way through that. Okay?
Cool. Cool. So the gap, right? So hopefully today what we're going to talk about is my journey, and I think I've always had great taste, but my ability has always kind of sucked and been, I don't know, the work hasn't been that great. So my journey of trying to move from the left side of the ability all the way over to the right side of taste. So you guys may have seen this chart before where people think success looks like, but really on the right side it's what it really tends to look like. And I might be here on a really, really good day, so take everything I say with a grain of salt. I too am still learning. So I'm the co-founder and CEO of Glimpse, a startup in New York City, and we are building a dating app that connects creative people through Instagram. So you build your visual profile through different kinds of interests and experiences, whether you'd like to go to music festivals, favorite kinds of restaurants, favorite things to do, and then we use that data behind the photos to be able to connect new and interesting people, and really easily you're able to have much more natural conversations. Cool, so I also went to the University of Florida. I graduated in 2009. I was the Dean's Assistant at the J School. And I was also a campus promoter doing anything I could find on Craigslist. Handing out condoms for Durex in the middle of Turlington, to promoting different movies down in Midtown, really anything that I could get my hands on to make a little bit of extra cash. My junior and senior year, I was out trying to market things. So I got into advertising for really three different reasons. Mostly inspired actually by the ad council that you were talking about earlier, right? So one, I wanted to learn about people. 2, I wanted to tell stories. And then 3, I wanted to take all of that and help inspire action. That I always thought like being an artist would be cool, but that doesn't necessarily move people to be able to do anything. How can you take all of that and really inspire action? So I think it was my junior year when I was here in school, I kind of experienced this for the first time, as I'm sure a number of you did as you were younger, with the Obama campaign. That Obama was really able to, and his whole campaign staff, really understand what people wanted and put together this really, really powerful movement to get people to self-organize and really go for the cause. And that's what really kind of put me in the direction to get going. So senior spring break, actually with Ad Society, I went to New York and started interviewing for different jobs and meeting with different people. I was probably the most underqualified person, maybe one of the hungrier people there. I even made these little nerdy business cards. But this thing happened really it was 2008, and it really affected the class of 2009 where nobody could get hired. Lehman Brothers shut down, and that kind of shut down the economy, and as a result, ad budgets were slipping, and it was really, really not encouraging for just getting out of school. But then, through UF, actually, I was able to land an internship with Publicis in New York, working on a pitch for Cadillac, which was super, super awesome. We were kind of doing some virtual work with a few students here, getting millennial insights for other different kinds of things, and they brought me up to Publicis, but I knew I was never going to be able to land a job there, right? Like, they just had zero budget, nothing was ever going to happen. So every morning before going into work, and every night, and probably every 15 minutes, just like busy Googling people on LinkedIn at different agencies, and checking out people from Leo Burnett, JWT, anybody who would have coffee with me, really putting it out there and getting very, very little response. One of the most discouraging things I've ever had to deal with. But one of those responses came from this brand strategy studio called Red Scout in New York. And they had this really interesting perspective, especially for me, an aspiring planner, that innovation was the most valuable form of marketing. So I ended up somehow landing a job with them, one of my first few responses. And this is kind of some of the work that we were able to do. So for example, Gatorade was leading market share for years and years. And then they started to lose that and came to Red Scout to really figure out what their new product line would be moving forward. And one of the things we talked about is we got on the ground and we talked to competitive athletes about their training regimen and what they needed for their hydration needs. And really what we learned is that hydration is not equal all across the board. For anybody who's a runner in here, you know your pre-run routine versus when you're running versus post-run routine is a little bit different. And as a result, we created the Gatorade G series for before you work out, when you work out, and after you work out. And I thought this was really, really cool because we weren't just selling a story, but we were building something to kind of put beyond that. So we did the same thing with Kate Spade. Kate Spade left the company, and their marketing team and design team were left with very little direction. So really got the whole team together and ideated around what the future of the company would be. Getting out of the office, talking to users, talking to their team, and really setting a North Star, figuring out what they would be able to do in the future. And really what we see, what we've landed on is this most interesting girl in the world, in the room. And ever since then, they've been able to really design around that. And then one of my favorite examples, I don't know if any of you love to travel, but for Westin, and redesigning the hotel room of the future for the future of work. So rather than necessarily creating an ad, getting out of the building, traveling all over the world, talking to different travelers from different cultures and different hotels about their experiences, and really what delivers on a better work experience when being on the road. So really, in my experience at Red Scout, I learned how to ask the right questions and never really outsource this research. And I think this is one of the biggest lessons learned that at least I've had in really taking my not so good ability and trying to catch up to that taste is never, it's not about finding the right answers, it's mostly about asking the right questions. And as a part of that, they actually sent us on trips around the world for inspiration. So I was able to go with 5 people to Tokyo, no client work, no agenda, but really just to go immerse ourselves in the culture and take a look at the cocktail culture out there, the food culture out there, the fashion culture out there, and then really be able to bring that back and be able to inspire different clients based on different kinds of business. That actually proved pretty successful. But I was a stupid millennial and I wanted more. I had this amazing job, but I was really itching for a little bit more, and I came across this book from Seth Godin. Has anybody here read a Seth Godin book or heard of Seth Godin? Okay, so Seth Godin is an amazing author. I read this book, Linchpin, highly, highly recommend it. And one of the things that he really talks about is settling for less when you could be remarkable. And his books are marketing focused, but I think they really apply to anybody and anything. But I think it comes with an asterisk and a warning. Like, you have to be ready for life change when you read his books, because they're one of the things that really motivate you to go out and do different things. So I wanted to take what I learned at Red Scout and really start applying that to people, right? So we were building CPG products and really telling these stories through innovation. but how could I do what Facebook had done? Right? And there are these new apps and websites popping up everywhere, Foursquare and Twitter, which really changed my entire outlook. It really changed. I was always looking at the people around me, but not everybody around the world, and thinking about how I could do something like that. So I quit my job at Red Scout to really pursue my own projects. Didn't really have a plan, but just kind of said, hey, for the next 6 to 12 months, I'm going to see what I can come up with. And it's kind of an interesting situation because I didn't really have any technical experience. I wasn't a programmer, no design experience, and I never even took a finance class. So this idea of like going out to start my own thing wasn't really rational, didn't really make too much sense. So the project that I worked on, that I started, was called Found It, and it was a solution to Lost and Found. And really this was inspired from my trip to Japan, where I learned that 80% of people actually return what they find out there, versus in the United States, that number is well below 10%. Especially in New York City where I live, like, nobody returns what they find. But then I thought to myself, it's like, actually there's a system in Japan, and people will return what they find if they're rewarded for it. And it's not just a monetary reward, but an emotional return, right? Why are you going to give something to a lost and found center when I can find the person who lost it and have the emotional satisfaction of being able to give it back to them? So we hacked together this little app called Found It, and it used Foursquare's location API and matching algorithm that if one person were to lose something and one person were to find things, it would be able to match them and bring them together. So I was back to the cold emailing, right? Back to the drawing board, and I must have emailed 1,000 people that I found either via Twitter, via Google, via the community, with really no agenda, but it's like, hey, what do you think? How could this be better? Who do I need to work with? And I came across this guy, Oscar Salazar, and every once in a while you just meet those people that change your life, and he was one of them. And he had just started this company, I don't know if you guys have heard of it, called Uber. And he really, really helped me not only get going, but how to think about making things and working on a team. And it's interesting to me because when I was at school and everybody talked about mentors. You have to find a mentor, you have to find a mentor. But all my mentors kind of sucked, and they never really felt worthy. But then I realized I wasn't shooting high enough, and I think this is one of the biggest lessons learned that I've had to bring my ability from the left side over to the taste side is you need a mentor to help you, but in order to get a great one, you need to show them how much you care. So I did this experiment, right? I was like, people are going to return what they find, let me prove it. So I took 100 envelopes, and I dropped them all over New York City, at bars and restaurants, on street corners, really anywhere. And 65 of them came back to me. And by no means is that scientific, right? But it's like, actually, if made easy, like people will return what they find. And then I was like, okay, I need to get a little bit more creative with this. How can I create some sort of art project that really gets people noticing and talking and really excited about what I'm doing? So I dropped 50 of these notebooks all over New York City with one simple question in it: what makes you happy? Draw it, take a photo, tweet it with this hashtag, and then leave it for someone else to be able to find. So here were some of the results. One of these days I'm going to make a book with all the responses. But again, by no means was this scientific, by no means was this, you should make this app, this is going to be a big business. But it really got people excited to be able to want to work with me. Coders to be able to help me be able to make it, and then looking for investors and mentors such as Oscar. It really helps sell through that we were the real deal. So we built this, we brought it down to South by Southwest. We had a pretty good response, but after probably about 6 to 9 months, we learned that people didn't really want to download another app when it came to Lost and Found. They wanted Lost and Found on their existing apps. So music festivals were actually one of the main places that we wanted to focus. But it's like, people were going to download another app just if they lost or found things. But what if Coachella had an existing app and they had a Lost and Found feature that was on there? That was more interesting. So, failed project, but learn insight if anybody needs an idea to work on. So we took this idea and we said, okay, this was cool, this was Lost and Found things. What if we could turn this into Lost and Found people, right? So we built a Misconnections app. Has anybody read Misconnections on Craigslist, heard of it? So basically, if you come across anybody and you miss them, you can write a personal ad on Craigslist, almost like you would in a newspaper 20 to 50 years ago. And I think it's less of a utility in terms of being able to meet up, but the storytelling in there is amazing. If you ever find yourself bored and just want to like read in people's regrets and sorrows, and I don't know, it's fascinating. So we built this Lost and Found app, or this Misconnections app. That failed too. But I met my future business partner while working on it, which turned out to be the biggest win ever. So I was broke, I wasn't living at home anymore, no apartment, had no health insurance. It was time to get a job again. So I got a job at this digital strategy firm called Undercurrent, and we help these big companies understand how to adapt to the digital age. So while working there, and that was a great company, and if anybody wants to talk about that later, tons and tons of stories there, but now that I had a job again in insurance, I was like, okay, I'm a normal human being, maybe I can actually start dating again, right? You can't really date when you don't have an apartment, but when you have an apartment, you're like, okay. So I tried OkCupid, and really what I noticed was that everybody started sounding exactly the same, right? Like, live, love, laugh, I love to have fun, guacamole makes me happy. I was like, okay, cool. And then everybody just goes and looks at all the photos, right? So I was like, I found myself kept wasting my time and kind of taking chances on, is like going out with people that you thought were good looking, but it's like, how do you meet somebody who's cool, right? So I had this theory that it was actually a storytelling problem, that people were being held back due to the constraint of the design of the profile. So it's not that we're not meeting the right people, but it's not, you're not telling your story the right way. Like Gatorade wasn't telling their story the right way, and like West End wasn't telling their story the right way. Can I take all of these insights about telling stories for companies and apply them to people? So this other thing that I kind of noticed was that like, whenever you met somebody new, you added them on Instagram. Whenever you added them on Instagram, you took this like breeze through their life, and you're like, oh shit, I kind of know this person now, right? And that Instagram really says a lot about people, where they travel, their sense of design, their aesthetic. Not everything about them, but it's almost the best version of themselves. And if you think about it, dating is kind of very, very similar as well. So then this app, Tinder, decided to come out, right? And it was interesting because then all of these people started listing their Instagram inside of their Tinder profile, which we thought was fascinating as well. So I started asking this question a lot, right? Does your Instagram say more about you than your dating profile? And overwhelmingly, the answer was yes, especially for really cute girls, right? Because at the end of the day, like if you want a dating app to succeed, if you have a community of really cute girls, the rest usually follows. So here was the first iteration of the idea, which was absolutely terrible. And going through and making this presentation, I hadn't seen these in a while. It's so embarrassing, right? And I think that's the point, right? Like whatever you do at the beginning starts out awful, and it's embarrassing. The next version is a little bit better, but like equally as bad, right? Like probably any of you in here could design a better version of this. I did this in Keynote, had no idea what I was doing, right? And we kept iterating. The product just like, it wasn't working. It kept sucking.